I mean, you can memorize what, like 5,000 vocabulary flashcards?
Oh, at least easily.
Yeah, and you can ace every single grammar test on your smartphone app. You could perfectly conjugate verbs on paper until your eyes cross. And yet, you can still find yourself utterly paralyzed when a barista simply asks you for your order.
Oh, it happens all the time.
You know the exact feeling. The moment actually arrives, it's time to speak, and you just, well, you freeze. The words just evaporate.
Completely gone.
Exactly. So today we are looking at why traditional language learning creates this, massive, impressive intellectual database in your head that your mouth physically cannot access when you actually need it.
It is an incredibly frustrating yet almost universally shared experience for really anyone attempting to acquire a second language. There is this massive invisible wall between knowing a language in theory, like understanding its rules and vocabulary, and actually deploying it in real-time, unstructured human interaction. And the reason for that wall, I mean, the core issue, is that we treat language learning like a history test rather than what it actually is, which is a physiological and neurological skill.
And getting past that freeze, tearing down that invisible wall, it's exactly the mission for today's deep dive. We have this highly practical, step-by-step roadmap to fluency in front of us.
Yeah, it's a great one.
The source material today comes from the creators at English Practice World. They've laid out this fascinating 5-step framework designed specifically to move you from just, passively hoarding vocabulary to actually using a language with real subconscious confidence.
And I think it is crucial to set the stage here regarding the scope of this framework. While the creators of this roadmap focus their examples specifically on English, and that is the language they use for their practical exercises, the underlying psychology, linguistics, and physical mechanics of this progression apply to literally any language you might want to learn.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, whether you are aiming for English, Spanish, Mandarin, or Arabic, this roadmap reflects the fundamental chronological order in which the human brain actually maps and acquires human speech.
Right, so we are essentially cracking the code on human fluency itself. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So the very first step they lay out on this roadmap is called fill your brain with English, or again, whatever language you are targeting. And the instruction is entirely focused on input, like listening and reading, putting on podcasts, watching foreign films, or listening to music for 10 to 15 minutes a day while you were, riding the bus or making dinner.
Right, very passive.
Right. But as I was reading this section, I found myself getting genuinely skeptical about one of their core claims. I really have to push back on this.
Oh, what part of the input phase seemed off to you?
Well, the source explicitly claims that during this first step, you do not need to understand every word you hear. In fact, they go out of their way to say it is completely fine if you don't understand anything at first.
Yes, they do say that.
And that just feels completely counterintuitive. I mean, if I am listening to a German podcast and I don't know German and I don't understand the definitions of the words, isn't that just a massive waste of my time? Am I not just listening to random, meaningless noise?
It feels like random noise to your conscious analytical mind, certainly, because your conscious mind is desperately looking for semantic meaning. It wants a definition to latch onto.
Exactly. I want to know what they're saying.
Of course you do. But beneath the surface, down in the auditory processing centers of your brain, something entirely different and profoundly necessary is happening. The reason this phase isn't about conscious comprehension is because you aren't trying to learn definitions yet. You are trying to passively absorb the acoustic environment of the language. They actually use the analogy that your brain is like a sponge here.
But, how does absorbing sounds without meaning actually help me learn? I still don't really see the mechanism there. If I listen to static on a radio, I don't suddenly, understand static.
Well, that's because language isn't static, right? It has distinct structural patterns. Think about it in terms of phone recognition.
Tones.
Yeah, phonemes are the distinct units of sound in a specified language that distinguish one word from another, and every language uses a completely different set of these sounds. When you listen to a language you don't know, it just sounds like one long, continuous stream of unbroken sound. You can't even tell where one word ends and the next begins, right?
Right, yeah. It just sounds like a rapid-fire blur of syllables.
Exactly. And that's because your brain literally lacks the neural pathways to segment those specific foreign sounds. Before you can assign meaning to a word, your brain has to know that the word is a distinct, separate acoustic unit. As the source text beautifully puts it, this step is about filling the cup before you pour from it.
Fill in the cup. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, by listening without the pressure of translation, you are allowing your auditory cortex to map the cadence, the rhythm, and the phonetic boundaries of the language.
So it's less like reading a dictionary and more like adjusting a tuning fork.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like if you hit a tuning fork, it takes time for the other fork across the room to catch the frequency and start resonating. You are basically tuning the brain's frequency so it can actually accurately hear the new language rather than just filtering it through the sounds of your native language.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. You are adjusting your internal tuning fork.
Mm.
I mean, if we observe how infants acquire their first language, they spend the first year of their lives doing exactly this.
Oh, wow. Right.
They don't have flashcards. They spend months just listening, gathering acoustic data, tuning their auditory cortex to the specific frequencies of their parents' speech. Only after that foundation is laid do they begin to attach meaning to those sounds.
You know, that significantly changes the perspective on step one. It actually takes the pressure off entirely.
It really does.
You don't have to sit at your kitchen table with a dictionary, pausing the audio every 5 seconds to look up a verb conjugation. You literally just let the rhythm of it wash over you while you cook dinner. You're just building the phonetic database.
Precisely. Because before you can physically produce a sound, your brain has to have a crystal clear acoustic map of what that sound is supposed to be.
Which actually provides the perfect logical bridge to the second step of the roadmap. Because once your ear is tuned and your brain's cup is full of these acoustic patterns, how do we actually start getting the language out of our bodies?
Right, because listening isn't speaking.
Exactly. Tuning the ear doesn't magically give you the ability to speak. So step two is copy what you hear. And the technique they use is called shadowing.
Shadowing, yes.
You listen to a native speaker, you hit pause, and you repeat exactly what they said, trying to perfectly match their speed, their rhythm, and their intonation. And honestly, reading this step made me realize we completely misunderstand what speaking is. We treat it like an intellectual exercise, but this step proves it's actually an athletic event.
It really is.
It's like going to the gym, but specifically a gym for your mouth, your tongue, and your vocal cords.
What's fascinating here is the sheer physicality of language that we just completely ignore in traditional classrooms. Just as you wouldn't expect to perfectly execute a backflip just because you read a book on gymnastics physics.
Which I definitely cannot do.
Right. You cannot expect to perfectly articulate a foreign language just because you know the grammar rules. Your mouth, your tongue, your lips, your jaw. They have spent decades forming the highly specific muscle memory required for your native language.
They are essentially locked into a highly specific choreography that we've been practicing since childhood.
Exactly. And a new language requires an entirely different choreography. It requires engaging different micromuscles in your face, placing your tongue against your teeth in ways that feel entirely unnatural and, manipulating airflow differently. You literally lack the neuromuscular pathways to effortlessly produce these foreign sounds.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so shadowing bridges the gap between the auditory map you built in step one and the motor cortex in your brain that controls your facial muscles.
So it is quite literally mouth training. And the source gives a highly specific, practical example of this shadowing technique. They suggest taking a very basic, mundane phrase like, "I would like a cup of coffee, please."
Classic.
Right. You don't just say the words, you listen to how the native speaker groups those words together.
Yeah.
You listen to where their voice rises and falls, the exact rhythm they use, and you practice mirroring it. You just do your reps.
And repetition is the key to muscle memory. By listening, pausing, and repeating over and over, you force your motor cortex to adapt. You are forging new neural pathways between your brain and your articulatory organs.
Wow.
And once those physical movements become automated through repetition, the physical act of speaking stops feeling clunky and starts feeling natural.
Okay, so let's track the progression here.
Yeah.
Your ear is tuned to the frequency of the language. Your facial muscles have been to the gym. They know the new choreography. The physical mechanics are ready.
Right.
But physical readiness does absolutely nothing to cure the psychological terror of actually walking up to a native speaker.
Oh, the freeze is still very real at this stage.
We still freeze. So how do we start generating our own original sentences without the crippling fear of being judged? That leads us directly to step 3, which, I have to admit, painted a hilarious visual in my head.
Ah, the self-narration phase.
Yes. Step 3 is simply talk to yourself. The source suggests becoming the play-by-play sports commentator of your own completely mundane daily life.
I love this part.
They paint this slightly ridiculous but incredibly vivid picture of a learner just standing alone in their kitchen saying out loud, "I'm making breakfast. I'm putting bread in the toaster. The bread is in the toaster. Now I'm pouring coffee." I mean, if a roommate walked in on you doing this, they would probably think you've lost your mind.
They probably would. But the psychological and neurological genius behind this specific step cannot be overstated. By talking to yourself, narrating your breakfast, you are entirely removing the audience. And when you remove the audience, you fundamentally alter the chemical state of your brain.
How so? Like, what does the audience actually do to the brain?
Well, the primary barrier to speaking a new language for an adult isn't a lack of vocabulary. It is the sheer overwhelming fear of embarrassment.
Yeah, nobody wants to sound stupid.
Exactly. When you are standing in front of a native speaker, your brain perceives a social threat. The fear of sounding foolish causes a spike in cortisol, the stress hormone, and that cortisol effectively shuts down quick access to the prefrontal cortex, which is exactly where all that new vocabulary you studied is stored.
Wait, really?
Yes, it's a phenomenon known in linguistics and psychology as an affective filter or a block in lexical retrieval.
Wow. So the freeze isn't you forgetting the language. It's a literal biological stress response, blocking your access to the words.
Precisely.
Your brain is basically prioritizing social survival over remembering the Spanish word for napkin.
That's exactly what's happening. So by standing in your kitchen alone and talking to your toaster, the stakes drop to absolute zero. There is no social threat. Cortisol levels remain at baseline. In this perfectly safe sandbox environment, you can stumble over your syntax, you can stop, you can correct yourself, and you can repeat the sentence about the toaster 4 times until it feels right in your mouth.
Right, because nobody's listening.
You are training your brain to execute lexical retrieval, pulling words from memory and constructing sentences in real time without paying the massive tax of social anxiety.
It's a brilliant bridge. You are practicing the act of spontaneous generation in a vacuum. And, if being a sports commentator feels a bit too weird, the text actually mentions a great alternative.
The nighttime recap.
Yeah. They suggest doing a simple 3 or 4 sentence recap of your day out loud to yourself before you go to sleep. Just saying, today, I went to work. I had lunch with Sarah. I came home and read a book. It is incredibly simple, but it gets the brain and the mouth working together to generate completely original thoughts.
And that daily consistency with small, low-stakes sentence generation is what builds the cognitive scaffolding necessary for spontaneous real-world interaction.
Speaking of the real world, here's where it gets really interesting. Because you can't stay in the sandbox forever.
Unfortunately not.
Eventually, you have to leave the safety of your kitchen and face the chaos of a live human being. Step 4 is talk to other people. And the source material is wonderfully blunt here. They don't sugarcoat it at all.
No, they're very direct.
They give a very clear warning. You will make mistakes. It is not a possibility. It is a mathematical certainty. But let me ask you about the nightmare scenario, because this is where my anxiety flares up.
Okay, let's hear it.
What happens when you finally try this? Say you've practiced ordering your coffee, and the barista just stares blankly at you because they have absolutely no idea what you just said.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of how human beings actually learn complex skills, we have to recognize that perfection is the ultimate enemy of progress. That blank stare from the barista that you are so terrified of, it is not a failure.
It feels like a failure.
It does, but mistakes, mispronunciations, and blank stares are the exact feedback mechanisms by which our brains calibrate. Think about it. When a toddler falls down while learning to walk, we don't declare that they have failed at walking.
Right.
We understand that the fall provides their nervous system with the exact spatial data needed to find their balance on the next attempt.
Okay, sure. But in the moment when the barista is staring at you and the line is forming behind you, the toddler metaphor doesn't make your heart beat any slower. How does the source suggest we practically handle that exact moment of failure?
The primary advice is behavioral. Do not panic and do not retreat to your native language. A blank stare simply means the communicative intent didn't land on that specific attempt.
So what do?
You take a breath, you deliberately slow down your cadence, and you simplify. You strip away all the complex grammar you were trying to use. The ultimate goal of language isn't to be grammatically flawless. It is to transfer an idea from your brain into someone else's. If you have to point at the espresso machine and use what feels like caveman grammar to get your point across initially, that is a highly successful interaction. You transferred the idea.
I really appreciate that framing. Communicative intent over grammatical perfection.
Exactly.
And the source suggests starting with incredibly small, highly predictable interactions to build up a tolerance for that stress. Like, don't try to go to a dinner party and debate philosophy. Go to a grocery store, find an employee, and simply ask, "Excuse me, where can I find the milk?"
That's perfect.
The 5-second interaction, you get the milk, you say thank you, and you leave with a massive psychological win.
And to further mitigate that stress, the text heavily emphasizes finding a dedicated language partner. And crucially, it doesn't even have to be a native speaker. Finding a fellow learner can be incredibly effective.
Really. Just someone else who's struggling.
Yes, two learners practicing together create a highly supportive, radically low-pressure environment. Both individuals know exactly how high the cognitive load is, both are acutely aware of the fear, and therefore, both are granting each other immense grace for the inevitable mistakes.
It reframes every conversation from a, performance into a practice session. Okay, so let's look at where we are on the roadmap. You are out in the world. You are having real conversations. You are ordering coffee. You are finding the milk with your language partner.
Making real progress.
But for a lot of learners, even when they reach this impressive stage, the actual act of speaking still feels incredibly clunky. It feels slow, and frankly, it is mentally exhausting. After 30 minutes of speaking, you feel like you need a nap.
The brain fog is real.
The source identifies the exact culprit behind this exhaustion. You are still relying on a mental middleman.
Yes. They are addressing the phenomenon known as the translation lag.
Right. The source outlines this exhausting 3-step cognitive process that almost all of us default to. Step 1. You think of the concept you want to express in your native language.
Right.
Step 2. You frantically scour your mental database to translate those specific words into the new language. Step 3. You finally send the signal to your mouth to speak the foreign sentence. And the problem is, by the time you've executed that 3-step sequence, the live conversation has already moved on.
It's too slow.
So the ultimate goal, step 5 of this entire framework is simply think in English or, think directly in your target language.
This is undoubtedly the most advanced tier of the roadmap, but it is the critical threshold that unlocks true, effortless fluency. We have to look at the cognitive load theory here. As long as you're actively translating in your head, your brain is acting as a live, simultaneous interpreter.
Which is an incredibly hard job.
Yeah. It is. That process burns an immense amount of cognitive glucose. It is computationally heavy. By actively rewiring your brain to bypass that translation phase, you drop the cognitive load dramatically. You send the conceptual thought directly to the new vocabulary. That is when the language stops feeling like a mathematical equation you have to solve and starts feeling like an automated reflex.
But, how do you actively rewire your brain? You can't just flip a switch and decide to think in French.
No, you can't.
But the text details a couple of brilliant, highly specific exercises to force this rewiring. The first one is direct environmental labeling. You look around your physical space, and instead of looking at an object, naming it in your native language, and then translating it, you try to summon the foreign word directly from the visual cue.
Right, skipping the middleman.
You look at a wooden object with 4 legs, and you just immediately think cable. You look at the device in your hand and think phone.
Exactly. You are attaching the foreign lexical unit directly to the physical sensory data in your environment. You are deliberately starving the native language neural pathway of traffic until it weakens, and reinforcing the direct target language pathway until it becomes the default route.
And then they suggest an exercise that takes this a step further, targeting an even deeper part of the brain. They argue you need to actively practice reacting in the new language.
This one is so powerful.
So if you accidentally drop your house keys on the sidewalk, instead of cursing in your native tongue, you deliberately train yourself to instinctively think, "oh no," in your target language. Or if you see a cute dog walking down the street, your immediate knee-jerk internal monologue should be, "so cute."
That is a profound neurological exercise because it targets our emotional autonomic responses. When you are translating a textbook, you are using the highly logical, conscious parts of your brain. But when you rewire your sudden reactions, surprise, frustration, joy, you are embedding the new language into the limbic system, the deeper, more instinctual layers of your subconscious.
Wow, the limbic system.
Yeah, you are no longer just wearing the new language like a heavy winter coat.
Yeah.
It is actually becoming part of your skin.
Which leads to the final milestone mentioned in the text, the holy grail that every single language learner waits for. The morning you wake up and suddenly realize that you just experienced a dream entirely in the new language.
Dreaming is the ultimate diagnostic proof that the language has thoroughly penetrated the subconscious mind. Your brain was entirely offline, not consciously trying to study, and yet it defaulted to the new linguistic framework to process its own internal narratives. The translation engine has been completely decommissioned.
So what does this all mean? Let's take a step back and look at the sheer elegance of this five-step progression from English practice world. Step 1, input. Tune your ear and map the acoustics without worrying about meaning. Step 2, shadowing. Take those sounds to the mouth gym and build the physical muscle memory. Step 3, self-talk. Remove the audience and practice real-time retrieval without the cortisol spike. Step 4, real conversations. Accept the blank stares, embrace the messiness, and prioritize communication over perfection.
And finally,
And step 5.
think in the language. Bypass the mental middleman, label your environment directly, and rewire your instinctual reactions.
It represents a highly logical, biologically sound progression from passive sensory mapping to active, automated fluency.
And the source material leaves us with a highly practicable challenge, which I'm going to pass directly to you listening right now. They call it the 10-minute challenge.
It's a great exercise.
The beauty of this framework is you don't have to tackle all 5 steps at once. The challenge is to pick just one of these steps today, wherever you are in your journey, and practice it for exactly 10 minutes. If you are at the very beginning, spend 10 minutes just letting a podcast wash over you. If you are further along, spend 10 minutes standing in your kitchen narrating your breakfast to your toaster. And as you embark on that 10-minute challenge today, it is vital to ruthlessly manage your own expectations. Fluency is never an overnight achievement. As the source wisely reminds us, rewiring your brain's neural pathways takes weeks, months, and frequently years of exposure.
Definitely.
The objective is never to wake up fluent tomorrow. The only objective is to build consistency over intensity, to simply be a fraction of a percent better today than you were yesterday.
That is the perfect mindset to have. Before we wrap up, though, I want to hand it over for one final thought regarding that ultimate 5th step, the stage where you are actively thinking, reacting, and eventually dreaming in a completely different language.
Yeah.
Because reaching that level implies something much deeper than just memorizing the new dictionary.
It does, and this raises an incredibly important, almost philosophical question regarding what fluency actually does to us.
Oh, this is fascinating.
If the ultimate goal of this framework is to profoundly rewire your internal reactions, if you are successfully training your subconscious to instinctively react to the world using a completely different linguistic architecture, and eventually dreaming in that new language, does your very personality subtly shift?
Wow.
Language isn't just a neutral tool for swapping out words. It carries distinct cultural frameworks, different emotional resonances, and unique ways of categorizing reality. So when the fundamental language of your internal monologue changes, do you actually become a slightly different version of yourself? Are you the exact same person in Spanish that you are in English? It is a fascinating reality of the bilingual brain and something deeply profound for you to mull over as you begin your 10 minutes of practice today.
Keep practicing, keep talking to yourselves in the kitchen, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.